up to 90% off retail. Rosendorf Evans Spurs at the Doubletree Hotel in Largo, Maryland at I-95 and MD 202.
Tonight, the breaking news, the deadly school rampage in South Florida. Oh my God! Gunfire erupting inside this high school. Students terrified. Tonight, the images now emerging. The screams heard from inside the classrooms. The armed officers going room to room into an auditorium to get the students out. Everybody down! The superintendent confirming this afternoon there are numerous fatalities. And just a short time ago, ABC News learning more than a dozen dead. Emergency teams treating victims on the sidewalk. Students running to safety, their backpacks piled up in the street. Parents rushing to the scene, desperate to find their children. The alleged suspect taken into custody, and what we're now learning about him at this hour. Team coverage right here tonight. A special edition of World News Tonight begins now.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on a very busy night, and sadly we do begin with another horrific school shooting. A difficult night for this nation, as we have just learned at least 17 dead after a shooting rampage inside a Florida high school. Gunfire heard inside and outside the school. It was put on lockdown, students running for their lives. A massive show of force from law enforcement, some of the injured treated right there on the sidewalk outside the school. Meantime, these images now emerging inside the school, students hiding from the gunfire, armed SWAT teams entering. Oh my God! Going classroom to classroom, you can hear the students in horror. Anguished parents waiting to hear from their children, tearful reunions when they finally reach them. At this hour, a suspect is in custody. It is believed he was a former student. His name is Nicholas Cruz. We do have team coverage beginning with ABC's Victor Oquendo on the scene in Parkland, Florida tonight.
Tonight in Florida, Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School turned into a war zone in seconds. Just after 2 p.m., as students were leaving the school for the day, a shooter opening fire inside. Students can be seen taking cover under a hail of gunfire as police race to the scene.
I have the gunshot victim. He's by the entrance on the west side of the school.
All of a sudden I hear boom, boom, boom. And this is just Austin. I hear screaming everywhere. And we ducked underneath my teacher's desk. SWAT
teams swarming the perimeter of the school, frantically searching for the gunman, then moving inside.
Does he know where the shooter is? We don't know, but we're entering the building.
Officers going room by room.
Run to the auditorium, lead everybody down!
Students barricading themselves inside, frantically texting their parents.
She keeps telling me to stay away. Be safe, Mom, you stay away.
What's going through your mind right now?
Telling her, no, Crystal, I'm your mother. I'm not staying away.
Outside, chaos. Students seen streaming out of the building, many with hands on their heads. A sea of backpacks can be seen abandoned on the ground. Paramedics rushing to treat the wounded, loading one after another onto stretchers and into ambulances. This injured person given chest compressions right there on scene. At least 14 victims treated for injuries. An hour later, at 3 p.m., that shooter still at large with possible description.
White male, burgundy shirt, wearing a black hat and either long black pants or shorts. He mixed in with a group of students that were running westbound.
Firefighters consoling school staff members as the shock begins to set in. Some parents reunited with their children who managed to get out safely. Others frantically searching for those still trapped inside.
We can't get to her. We can't get a hold of her.
Have you called and you've texted, nothing has come back?
No. Her girlfriend got shot, we heard.
One student recalling a horrifying scene inside, seeing her teacher shot.
We saw his body for like 30 minutes. We were just like praying and crying, and then the police came and we just got out.
Just before 4 p.m., the 18-year-old gunman taken into custody without incident. The toll of this carnage now becoming clear.
There are fatalities that are involved. We can't confirm the number at this point.
Everybody knows around here is a safe place, and you don't expect this to happen here, but then when that happens, you're just taken aback by it.
And Victor Oquendo live from the scene tonight there in Parkland, Florida. And Victor, we know at this hour parents are still being reunited with their children.
David, it's been more than 4 hours since the shooting, and we're still seeing kids walking away from the scene with backpacks on. So many parents out here eager to see their children. You can see behind me, it is still a very active scene. We just got the latest numbers from police. At least 17 people are dead tonight. 13 killed inside the school, 4 killed outside. And David, tonight, multiple people are in surgery. David?
In surgery, we are thinking of them. And Victor, while we're looking at those pictures behind us, just describe for us the scene, if you will. We know that the FBI is on the scene, local law enforcement as well on the scene. And as you mentioned, as the reunions take place, there were also the images of the backpack simply left out in the street just beside the school.
David, this is a massive school, so as you can imagine, the police presence here, the amount of law enforcement that showed up from the surrounding agencies, it was an impressive show of force here. It is just a mess here, to be honest with you right now, but investigators will be working through the night to determine exactly, give us an exact number, working through this horrible scene here tonight, David.
Right, Victor Oquendo leading us off, and so sadly seeing those students with their arms in the air. Unfortunately, children know what to do across this country when gunfire breaks out. As we mentioned, ABC News has now learned at least 17 dead. Just a short time ago, we heard from the sheriff, Scott Israel, whose own children went to that school.
I want to start out by saying this is a catastrophic, an unbelievably catastrophic day in Broward County history. It's devastating. I'm sick to my stomach. We have multiple casualties. We've had approximately 14 people transported to area hospitals with varying degrees of injuries. There are multiple casualties, though. There are folks that have lost their lives. We have multiple SWAT teams clearing all the buildings. It's one of the biggest schools in Broward County. It's huge. It's a huge campus. We have a shooter in custody after he committed this horrific, homicidal, detestable act.
The sheriff then talking about his own children who went to that school.
My very own triplets went to that school and graduated from Stoneman Douglas. They played football and lacrosse at that school. So it's just catastrophic. I don't know how many injuries there were, but we know 14 people were transported to area hospitals with varying degrees of wounds.
The sheriff there late this afternoon. This was a very large high school, a sprawling campus, and as you heard at the top of the broadcast, near the very beginning of this, there was also a fire alarm. It's still unclear whether that was pulled to alert the students, but some were already outside when they heard the gunfire. Some of them ran back into the building. I spoke to Gabriela Figueroa just moments ago. She barricaded herself in a classroom closet. Take a listen. Gabriela, thank you for being with us. I know this was a horrific afternoon to witness. You were actually outside because you had heard a fire alarm at first?
Yes.
And that's when you heard the shooting begin?
Yep, it just started when the fire alarm began.
How many gunshots did you hear?
I heard about 6.
6 gunshots.
6 or 7.
And it was your instinct to then run back inside the building?
Run in, yeah, I was outside, so, like, usually they told us when there's a, something I think you run and find the nearest classroom and just stay put, and that's what I did.
So you were trying to find a classroom to shelter in place, and once you got into that classroom, what did you do?
I said, okay, I'm going in the closet. I ran in the closet. I just stuck down, and then I called my mom before I got into the classroom. I was, screaming. I was like, there's a school shooter, there's a school shooter. It was just insane.
You had locked yourself in that closet. Were you by yourself?
I was with a couple of friends and other people in that closet, too.
Gabriela, can you just describe the scene once you got out of that closet that you'd been hiding in, what it was like when you finally were able to see all of your classmates again?
When I got out of that closet and I was going outside when the cops pressed us, I just broke down crying. I saw all the spots, everything. We had to be in a single file line. I just wanted to, honestly, just go home.
Just go home.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's where you are tonight. I know you're there with your dad and your family, and we're glad you're home and safe tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gabriela.
You're welcome.
You know, scenes like these today, shootings at schools, an all too familiar sight now across this country. This shooting, by one count, the 18th just this year. Multiple fatalities at several of those shootings. And this evening, what we're now learning at this hour about the suspect, Nikolas Cruz. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, tonight.
This is the young man seen here in handcuffs wearing combat-style boots, believed to have committed today's massacre. Thought to have ties to a school, now etched into the country's violent history of mass shootings.
He was found off campus. I don't exactly know where. I believe he was found in the city of Coral Springs by a Coconut Creek police officer. That's unconfirmed right now.
Arrested off campus, sources identifying him to ABC News as Nicholas Cruz. And a law enforcement source telling ABC News that an assault-style rifle may have been used in today's carnage.
He was not a current student. I wasn't there, but I was told that there was no confrontation. He was, can you hear me? He was taken into arrest without incident. I believe he's approximately 18 years old.
The school shooting today marks at least the 18th so far this year, and it is also symptomatic of a nation where mass shootings, in which 4 or more people are shot in an incident, have become commonplace. The nation averaging more than 300 mass shootings in the last 3 years.
And so let's get to Pierre Thomas with us live tonight from our Washington bureau. And Pierre, we know the ATF and the FBI both on the scene tonight, and now the hard work to really find the motive here.
David, the FBI is now conducting an intensive background check looking for social media footprints and any ties to extremist groups. So far, no evidence pointing toward terrorism, but it's early in this investigation, David, and sources tell me no resource will be spared to find a motive.
All right, Pierre, thanks to you. I'm joined tonight by ABC News crime and terrorism analyst Brad Garrett, a former FBI agent himself. And Brad, this suspect was captured. I know that's rare. Often in these mass shootings, the shooters take their own lives before authorities can get to them.
That's true. This guy apparently wanted to be famous alive. But think James Holmes, Aurora, Colorado, and the movie theater. He walked out the back door and surrendered.
And Brad, the suspect was a former student. That's what we believe at this point from authorities there on the scene, a former student at the school. What does that tell us, obviously, about possible links to some of the students still attending class there?
Because the school is the issue, David, in his mind. Much like Adam Lanza went back to an elementary school at Sandy Hook. He hadn't been there in years. It's what the school represented in his mind.
Brad Garrett with us, a former FBI agent, our terrorism analyst. Brad, we thank you as always. Unfortunately, always tough topics when we bring you on. In the meantime, what are schools to do in this country to protect our children? So many of them taking new steps, but can they ever be enough? Here's ABC's Clayton Sundell on that part of the story tonight.
Tonight, what used to be unimaginable is the new reality in small towns and big cities.
The death toll of students, children killed in just the first 6 weeks of this year, now at least 19, another 23 injured.
Drill, we need to lock down.
For kids, lessons in math and science now come with lessons in how to react if a gunman attacks their campus. Teachers taught to lock doors and block windows. Police have changed their tactics too, as we saw in this 2016 active shooter drill. At this Colorado high school, police and firefighters trained side by side to immediately confront a threat. It's a lesson from Columbine. When that school was attacked in 1999, it had long been policy for officers to wait outside for the SWAT team. But that 45-minute delay before officers went in was later criticized for allowing the gunman to continue their killing spree.
I was one of the first medics at Columbine. We did have to stand outside, unfortunately, and wait for the building to be cleared before we could go in and find any survivors.
Another thing safety experts recommend is that schools should not only keep outside doors locked, but they should track all visitors to a campus at all times. Students also play a role. If they see signs of trouble in places like social media, they should be encouraged to speak up. David?
And so many often do. Clayton Sundell, our thanks to you. At the White House tonight, President Trump was made aware of this shooting as the scene was unfolding late today, tweeting his prayers and condolences. ABC senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega joins us live from the White House tonight. And Cecilia, we know that since taking office, President Trump has addressed the nation 3 times after mass shootings, something his predecessors had to do and often as well.
17 times for President Obama by our count, David. But for President Trump, there's been a theme in many of his remarks. After that church shooting in Texas, President Trump said it would be a little too soon to talk about gun laws. After the massacre in Las Vegas, he said, we'll be talking, quote, we will talk about gun laws as time goes on. David, there has not been a very serious public policy conversation about gun control here at this administration, in this White House. The president tweeted today, no child, teacher, or anyone else should ever feel unsafe in an American school. We will see if this is the one that forces that policy conversation.
All right, Cecilia Vega live at the White House. Cecilia, thanks as always. There is still a lot more ahead on World News Tonight this Wednesday. The other news this evening, the desperate search at this hour for a missing 4-year-old girl. Authorities say the girl may have been kidnapped, her mother severely beaten, found in the home, and what she's saying about a possible suspect at this hour. Also news tonight about that midair scare we reported on, and new pictures after the engine falls apart high above the